Good morning, welcome back, tutorials number 6, flying through the episodes. Anyways, this episode is called the 3 seams, or the 3 types of seams and stitches, and I didn't really think about what this episode is called. This episode is called the 3 seams and the things that come with them that you have to know to be good at sewing. Wait, hold on, I can make that rhyme. That you have to know when you learn to sew. Here we go. Let's hope it doesn't snow. Row, row, row your boat. Gently down the stream into the tutorial. Let's get into it. Vanos. The first seam we're going to be doing is the basic straight stitch. I would put the length on about 2.5 and of course the width down to 0. And then make sure you back tap when you start your seam. Back tap is when you go forward a couple stitches and then back a couple stitches and then you do your seam. Actually, I think back tap is only the backwards part, hence the name back tap. But y'all know what I'm talking about. And then back tap at the end as well. As you can see here, I go back a little bit and then I go forward again. And that way it locks the stitches in place at the end so it doesn't unravel. It's pretty annoying. So at the end of the day, that's what it looks like. That's what your seam looks like. Beautiful. To finish that seam, you can use a zigzag stitch. You're going to put your setting to zigzag, the length a little less than 1, and the width down to about anywhere between like 3 to 5, depending on what you're doing. And then what I do is I put the needle all the way on the left, and then I line the seam, like the edge of it, up with the middle of my foot. The foot is the thing that attaches, that's on the fabric, the like little bottom, the like flat. I don't know how to explain it. Look up zipper foot. That's what the zigzag looks like, and that way it won't fray. The edge won't fray. To go even a step further with the straight stitch, you can top stitch it, which is when you go back to the straight stitch. And for top stitching, you can put the length on about 3.5, and the width back down to 0. And then you basically sew. You tuck the extra fabric from the back side over. So in this case I tucked it to the right side, and then sew about 1/4 inch away from the seam. Just sew over, so then that way it like secures it in place and it makes it lie flat. You can also iron it. The top stitch makes it a little stronger. Usually you would do it in the same color as the fabric, but I did it in a different color so you can see what I'm doing. The next seam we're doing is the French seam. So this side, instead of right side to right side, plot twist, you never heard me say this before, wrong side to wrong side, so the right sides are facing out. And you're going to sew about 1/8 of an inch, usually, away, 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. So you can see, it's just a basic straight stitch, the first step. And now we put right sides to right side and fold it over the seam we just sewed. So basically we're hiding the seam inside the next stitch we're about to do, if that makes sense. So now the seam allowance, I'm doing 1/4 inch seam allowance. We did an 1/8 inch before, now 1/4 inch. So basically it's tucking the extra fabric like inside the seam that we're sewing now, if that makes sense. So there's no exposed edges on the seam. Let's see, it'll show it better here. So you can see the outside looks like the basic straight stitch we just did, except the only difference is on the inside, now there's no rough edges at all and no zigzag. It's just folded over fabric. So you can go ahead and top stitch that or leave it and iron it, do whatever you want. But that's just a little bit fancier way of sewing the straight stitch, I guess. The third and final stitch we're going to do is the flat felled seam, which is the seam that's often found on like the outside edge of jeans. It's also on a lot of denim jackets, and it's typically used with denim, but it's also on a lot of like work flannels, not flannels, like Carhartt shits that people wear. I don't know what they're called. They're like button downs but heavy duty.
whatever. Flat felt seam. It's fire. I use it all the time. Let's get into it. So you're gonna leave a lot more seam allowance for this. I usually do an inch seam allowance, and you'll see why. It kind of depends on if you're doing one top stitch or two top stitch. Hold on, let's get through it step by step. So you're gonna start by doing an inch seam allowance, and then you're gonna cut just the top end, not both fabrics, but just the top layer. You're gonna cut it in half, or a little less than half. I mean a little more than half, but definitely don't do more. And then you're gonna fold it over, like the long side. You're gonna fold it over to the seam that we just sewed. Most people will iron it. A lot of people don't have an iron when so I'm gonna show you how to do it without an iron. So you're gonna fold it over like that and then just stitch across. It's a little confusing, but once you start doing it, so just take the longer end and fold it over the shorter end to meet the straight seam we sewed earlier, and then you're gonna sew that down, if that makes sense. And so you can just iron this. You technically don't have to sew it. It'll look a little prettier, but it doesn't change the way the outside looks. It only looks a little ugly on the inside. So if you don't have an iron, it's not the end of the world. You can still do this seam, which I haven't seen anybody else say, which is cool, you know. Anyway, that's how it should look. So this is the side that's not. This is the longer side, and then this is like the shorter side that it's folded over. You can see, you can still pick up. I think it makes sense. Anyway, now we're gonna top stitch it. Usually you do 2 rows of top stitching for a flat felt seam, because like for example, on the outside of jeans it has 2 rows of stitches. Well, if you didn't know, now you know. So that's 1 top stitch. I did, I think, a 1/4 inch away, or you probably an eighth inch away from the seam might look better. I think I did a 1/4 inch, and now I'm doing another 1/4 inch away from that top stitch. And since this is a lot of measurements, but just stick with me here. Since we did an inch seam allowance to start with, and then we folded it in half, that's half an inch. So now we're doing 1/4 inch plus another 1/4 inch. So that's exactly that half an inch. So as you can see, it made a perfect seam, and none of the edges are exposed. Flat felt seam is very strong. Use it on your heavy duty shit. Alright guys, I'm gonna do the outro from here because I like this mic and the sound is probably a lot better. Crispy audio. Crispy, you hear me? Anyway, I appreciate y'all for your time. No, that's not English. Thank y'all for your time. I love you. I'll see you next week. Please give me ideas for videos of shit you want to see. I think I might do a jeans tapering video because somebody on TikTok was asking me about that. By the way, I got like 50 followers on here from TikTok in the last 3 days. So welcome y'all. Welcome to the fam. I love you guys. You're part of the fam now. It is what it is. Whether you like it or not, you're stuck. But we're gonna grow together. I started this like 2-3 months ago. We going places, bruh. We going places. So stick around. Stick around for the journey. Come on a journey with me. And then I'm gonna always say this. In I don't know how many years, but in a couple of years, you gonna be the annoying fuck in the comments commenting, I was here when he had 200 followers, and now he has 5,000 followers, or 10,000, or 2 million. You never know. So, with that, I bid you adieu. Adieu? I bid you adieu. Adios. I never realized adieu and adios sound so similar. Anyway, I'm out. Peace.